All
Are you ready for
right.
this?
I'm ready for this. Who's ready for this? Hey, everybody, you guys are in for a super treat today because I have my amazing new friend who's probably one of my newest best friends because we have so much fun talking and just sharing and um, brainstorming and gathering ideas from each other. So I want to welcome Theresa to the show. Hello, Theresa.
What's happening, Darlene? How are you?
I'm doing amazing. And some people know you as Tigo or T. So I'm going to say all the names so that we make sure we cover all the bases. But Theresa and I met recently. I was a guest on her upcoming summit, which it's not happening right this second when we're recording, but the week that you guys hear this episode and it drops, the summit's going to be live. But we had so much fun connecting and just sharing stories together. I had to have her on the podcast for you guys so that you guys could really get to see who she is, because I know when you sign up for the summit, which you're going to want to do because there's so much amazing information, that you're not going to hear as much about Theresa because she's the one interviewing during the summit. So I was like, how fun would it be to have her on the show and hear a little bit about her story and hear some of those back pieces to how she started her business and how her life came to be this amazing life that she's leading today. So Theresa, can you tell us just a little bit about you and your story?
Oh, sure. Well, right now I'm hosting a national show, but I've been in production for almost 20 years. I was behind the camera and very, very comfortable behind the camera. I wanted to stay back there forever. And I've been told for years, you need to go out front. You need to go out front and host. And I said, no, 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 no. This is where I sit. This is where I'm comfortable. This is where I stay. And in December, we decided, okay, I'm going to start doing a show because I wanted to interview experts. And we decided, okay, we're going to do a show. We're going to do it locally in Las Vegas first, and then we'll expand to other markets. And we started, and then within a week or so, we decided to take it from just local Las Vegas to the Family Channel, and the Family Channel's in 34 markets, mainly back east. And we got 4 episodes in, and COVID hit. And I
Oh no.
thought, oh, see, I knew I should have stayed, back there, and reached out to the networks and said, hey, COVID hit, do we just shut everything down and I'll call you when it's over? And they said, oh, no, you have a year-long contract. So you can either air the same 4 episodes until COVID is over, or you figure out how to get us more episodes. So I went from full production studio and full crew to bringing everything into this wonderful room in my home and being producer, director, editor, host, vacuum cleaner person, PA, grip, you name it, I do it in this house. But we are now 34, 35 episodes in. And midsummer, we got approached, and we are now on Amazon Prime. We've been on Amazon Prime now for 7 episodes. So just over a month and a half or so, we've been on Amazon Prime. So it's going pretty good. I guess I'm doing something right.
That's amazing. And imagine you pivoted your business because of the pandemic and look at how far you've come. You were just a few episodes in and you were like, what the heck am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And now you're 34 episodes later. Like
34 episodes later, and
that's
we're
a,
talking to people all over the world, and that's what's really neat, because honestly, being in Vegas, we kind of take advantage of stuff. We kind of, well, everybody comes to Vegas, so we only interview people when they came to town.
ah,
We didn't think about, doing things on Zoom and all that. Oh, Bob, when will you be in town? Come on by, stop by, we'll interview you, blah, blah, blah. We didn't think about Zoom and StreamYard and all this kind of technology. People just didn't do that. You use that for meetings. You didn't use it for shows.
yeah.
And now that this has become commonplace, I mean, Oprah's doing Zoom, now that this has become commonplace, we're interviewing people from all over the world that we would have never had the opportunity to interview, that never comes to Vegas.
Yeah.
So it's really changed the way we do things.
Yeah. And the reach of people that you're able to reach out to who might not have had a Vegas trip planned, but now they're able to come on the show and share their expertise and share some of their story, which is huge
Yeah.
in this day
Yeah.
and age. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
we
awesome.
we forget that we have like all this amazing technology. Like I couldn't imagine had this pandemic happened 30 years ago, like what our world would look like, because we didn't have Zoom, we didn't have Did we have computers? Maybe we can't. No, I don't think we had computers 30 years ago.
We had
Maybe
computers,
green
but they were
screens.
very slow. They were very slow.
With some dial-up connection.
Yeah, I mean, even 5 years ago, even 5 years ago, this would have been an entirely different, nightmare. Not that it's not a nightmare now for, the world, but it would have been an entirely different nightmare 5 years ago. With the way technology was, the speed of the internet and all that kind of stuff. A lot of the technologies that we're using now, people weren't using. Phones weren't as fast as they are now. You couldn't watch video the way you do then. So it's like the timing technology wise couldn't have been better for this to hit, because people are saying, well, they're bored sitting at home. Well, imagine sitting at home in the 80s. Or the early 90s, and you're playing Scrabble 24 hours a day because there's nothing else you could do. It's an entirely different world.
Yeah, we're considering we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're pretty darn spoiled, with all the resources and tools and support that we actually have, because you're right. If had this happened in the 80s, we would have still probably been outside barefoot, drinking out of a hose, playing with the neighborhood kids, but we'd be bored out of our mind for every other possibility.
And how do you do school? How do you do homeschool? How do you do any of that? You're going to have the people waiting in line 6 feet apart every, Thursday to pick up homework and drop off. It's like, there's no way to do this stuff, So it's the timing couldn't have been better technology wise to be able to do this. I wouldn't want to do it, period, but I'd much rather do it now than do it in the 90s or the 80s or the 70s.
Absolutely. So you told us a little bit about your business now. I'd love for you to take us back a little bit and tell us a little bit about the early days as an entrepreneur. What did that look like for you?
Wow. The early days of an entrepreneur. How far back do you want me to go? Because I started my first business when I was 10.
Yeah, tell me.
Go all the way back there?
Yeah, what'd you do when you were 10? I'm always curious about those early childhood businesses.
Well, I'll tell you, when I was 8 years old for my 8th birthday, my father came home on my birthday and said, "Happy birthday, kid. I'm cutting off your allowance." And I went, "Wow, I can't wait for 9, Dad." "What do you mean you're cutting off my allowance?" Well, my parents were older and they were sharecroppers when they were kids, and they were terrified that they wouldn't be here when I got 18 and on my own. And they wanted to make sure I understood how to take care of myself, the value of $1, how to pay bills, blah, blah, blah. So he figured if he cut off my allowance and I got a job, quote unquote, I would start understanding the value of money. Well, at 8 years old, I wasn't even allowed to cross the street by myself. So what kind of job am I going to get? So I got a paper route, and my father literally followed me as I did the paper route because I wasn't allowed to cross the streets by myself. And that lasted all of 2 weeks. He was like, "Yeah, this isn't working." Because now he had 2 jobs. So he got this idea standing in the butcher shop. Back then, I'm 56, almost 57. So we used to go to butcher shops back then. Back then, he asked the butcher to give him a piece of that big brown paper. And he brought it home and he taped it to the wall and he wrote down all my chores and he put a dollar amount next to it. And he says, "Now, if you want to go to the movies, you know how much chores you got to do. You want to go, hang out with your friends, if you want clothes outside of the clothes for school, you want new shoes, So, and I literally had to do an invoice and submit it by Friday because he got paid on Mondays. And I was like, well, this is interesting. And we did that all the way until I graduated high school. I mean, lawn care, oil changes, the whole thing.
Wow.
Well, when I was 10, I'm sitting on my front step, and I grew up on the south side of Chicago. And I'm sitting on my front step, and I noticed that the ice cream truck comes down the street. And back then, kids used to run for the ice cream truck, whether they had money or not.
Yeah.
They would run, and then when their friends got ice cream, they would beg them for a bite or a lick. "Come on, give me a bite, give me a lick." You wouldn't do that now to save your life. But back then, give me a bite, give me a lick. And I thought, oh, wow, this is interesting. So I made a great friend list when I was 10 years old by loaning them money to buy ice cream.
Mm.
And then when I became 14, I found out about interest. And then I became basically a loan shark because then I started charging them interest and I didn't care about the principal. But along the way, I realized that people would pay you to do chores for them. So a lot of my neighborhood friends that, like doing different things, I would hire them to do everything from walk dogs to rake leaves to shovel snow. We painted houses, we changed the oil, you name it, we did it. And on the other side, I loaned money for everything from, you know, getting ice cream all the way up to down payments for cars and, getting your prom date's tuxedo reserved. So that's how I started my first business. I was a handy person. I was
Yeah.
actually a handy foreman because I didn't actually go do their work. I sent other people to do it.
That's awesome. So I can imagine that instilled so much of who you are today, like, and how you show up and how you deliver and how you make an impact in the world. What would you say is like the biggest lesson you feel like you were taught during how your dad chose to teach you about money?
The biggest thing I learned about it was, if you wanted something, you had to work for it. I wasn't handed anything. I didn't have a trust fund or anything like that. If I wanted something, I had to earn it. And on top of that, I learned the value of money. I learned not to just waste it because I couldn't just go back to the well. I couldn't go to my parents and say, hey, I need $5 for the weekend, or I need $10 for this or that. They were like, no, you need to figure that out. You need to do more chores, or you need to, do whatever. So I really learned the value of a dollar, and I learned how to be independent. The funny thing is that by the time I was 14, 15 years old, I was making more money than my parents. And my father literally passed away in 2010. And when he passed away in 2010, he still hated computers because he thought they were all wrong. Because he would go, when I was a kid, to go pay his mortgage or go pay his car note, and they would tell him, see, back then you had to go in to pay
Into the
these
building.
bills, okay, or you mailed in checks. But he would go in and they would tell him that there was nothing due, that they already had the payment for that month. And he didn't realize that I had already paid it, and I never told him. So
Aww.
he thought that the computers were just bad. This is why you can never trust a computer, he would say. You can never trust those things. So until he passed away, he never trusts computers because of that. But yeah, I really learned the value of a dollar with my parents.
Such a beautiful story though, of like you helping support him, and like you didn't even tell him you were doing it, which is pretty cool. Like he just he blamed the computer technology, which is kind of funny considering that's how you make your money today, is thanks to this beautiful computer technology equipment, like something that he turned his nose up to, like, oh, you can't trust that, you can't do this. And that's exactly how you earn your living today.
Yeah, I mean, I've always done whatever the opposite of my dad. It's like, when I was in high school in the South Side of Chicago, you can imagine there's some things you could get into in Chicago. And, my swim coach back then saw me kind of drifting off and said, and she introduced me to the computer programming department, which I didn't even know existed. And back then, computers were the size of buildings, and they were less powerful than the phone you have right now.
Yeah.
And it was ice cold in there. And they had key punch cards that were super loud and noisy. But I thought it was just heaven. And that teacher told me, he said, if you want to learn, I'll teach you everything I know, but you got to go to class. And I was like, oh, okay, fine.
Fine.
So I went to class, and now I program in 16 computer languages. But all that started back in high school to keep me out of gangs,
That's
keep
like
me off the street.
mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's where it started. Zeros and ones. That's been my life for most of my life, over 40 years now.
Wow. That's amazing. And I love that you had the right people in your life that were watching out for you, making sure that you made the right choices, because we can all easily go down the wrong rabbit hole, right? And get off track from where we're going and headed, or where we planned to head for our life. And it's like you have those guardian angels who are there to support us and like pull us back in. So
yeah, and you want to see the gift, and realize that they're not just being nosy. And that's the problem, especially when you're a teenager. You think you know everything. There's an old saying that says your parents get smarter as you get older. and it's true. It goes with guardians too. They get smarter as you get older. And sometimes they're just trying to be there. They're just trying to help. They've been down that road.
Yeah.
And they're trying to keep you from falling on your face or worse on that road. And if it wasn't for that, I would have never joined the Navy. I would have never gotten into computer programming. I don't know if I would have made it out of the South Side of Chicago, because I was starting to attract the wrong elements.
Yeah.
And it was starting to become very easy to fall down the wrong road. So I'm really happy and blessed that I was able to pick the right road and listen and pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a blessing when we have those people that come alongside us and lift us up and help us, recourse the direction that we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably wouldn't have found computers like you did back then any other way.
No.
It would have easily been, a stepping stone, and a whole new direction could have become.
Yeah, it would have been an entirely different direction than, than what I did now, because I was bored. I'm one of those kids that has a genius IQ and went to public school. So I was completely bored. I would see people in the hallways, and back then, now my understanding is attendance matters for your graduation. But when I was in school, attendance didn't matter, grades did.
Yeah.
So as long as you passed the test, it didn't matter. So I would see people, instructors, teachers in the hallway on Monday, on Tuesday, and they would say, Miss Goss, am I going to see you in the class today? And I go, no, I don't think so. It's Tuesday, but I'll catch you on that test on Thursday, because I would be bored out of my mind, And my cousin had the coolest Camaro, and he let me, when I'm 16, I'm driving a brand new Camaro. So I'm a cool kid, and I'm leaving and come. Yeah, I would have been in the entirely wrong environment if it wasn't.
Yeah, you wouldn't have made it in this day and age, because they almost, they care about the grades too, but you have to be there, and you have to have attendance. You better have a doctor's note, and you better have that parent signed off form that said that you had the doctor's note.
I signed my mother's name so often on notes when I was in high school that when she actually wrote a note, they called her because they thought it was fake.
They thought it was fake. That's amazing. You sound like me when I would run home from high school, and I'd check the mailbox because they'd send postcards home if you didn't show up to school. And so I would watch for it to come in the mail if I decided not to go. And I would have to hide those forms so my mom wouldn't find out.
Yeah, see, they didn't even do that back then.
Yeah.
They, as long as you're passing the courses, they didn't pay any attention to it. It was up to, somebody, a mentor, somebody else to step in and say, you need to do better. You need to be better. And, long as you checked into the building, and I would check into the building, but there were all kinds of doors to get out of the building when nobody knew you left.
Yeah.
And then I'd come back in time for practice. So, it was an entirely different world.
Yes. And it's fun to reminisce on it and think back to how things used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And think about it. I think about the stories I hear from people that are my age, because I can't say this generation or that. I've heard some serious horror stories from people that are my age. And I think how lucky I was that kind of thing didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
I was just lucky, because that could have happened to me 1,000 times with the crazy stuff that I was out there doing, thinking that I was Teflon and nothing was going to stick to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm pretty sure all teenagers are invincible.
Yeah.
So I know I thought I was.
Exactly.
So it doesn't matter which generation for that. When you're in that teenage years, everything, you're smarter than everybody else, and you don't need anybody's opinions. But I love that we have people that come into our lives and mentor us and help pull us back in the right direction, because life is hard. Life can be challenging. We can easily go the wrong direction, and it can impact so many things in our world and even our generations to come. It's that ripple effect that we have based off of the choices that we have. So one of the choices that you made in your life was that you were going to start your own business, and you were going to do things maybe against the norm. I know you mentioned you went to the Navy. Was it during your time in the Navy? Was it a little bit after the Navy that you decided to start your own business again and kind of started that direction?
I don't think I ever really technically stopped thinking like an entrepreneur.
Okay.
I've always thought that way. But while you're in the military, like I said, I was a loan shark, and I would get checks sent to me when I was stationed in the Philippines.
Wow.
And I got called into the captain's office and was like, what is this? And I said, well, I have a business, and I did it. They were like, you're in the Navy now, this has to
like,
stop.
Not happening.
And I'm like, okay, fine.
They're like, we own you.
Yeah, basically. And I'm like, okay, fine. So that was the end of that. And I didn't want to take any chances of having any more problems. So while I was in the military, I didn't mess around with any kind of business outside of that because I didn't want to be distracted. But as soon as I got out of the military, I started another business. I owned a painting business for a couple of years, and I kind of fell into that. I got a part-time job painting houses when I was literally homeless, as a matter of fact. Wow. And got a part-time job painting houses, and overheard the guy who hired me, how much he was getting paid for the gig and how much he was paying us. And I went, now, how does that work? So I went and asked another contractor guy, how do you get paint gigs? And he said, you're a subcontractor. And he broke it down for me. And I was like, okay. And he said, basically, all you really need is a business card. He's like, you can do it under somebody else's contract until you get it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what? So a couple of weeks later, I had my own business cards and I started a painting business. Then I realized that women got like kidded a lot for being on construction jobs, but then they also got a lot of attention. So I thought, okay, I'm going to hire an all-woman crew. And I was in Virginia at the time.
Yes,
I'm going to hire an all-woman crew, and we're going to have a painting business in Virginia. So I ended up hiring 2 centerfold models that were twins. Okay, it's a true story. Centerfold models, right?
You can't make this shit up.
You can't make this stuff up, right? So I hired these centerfold models. So when we get out of the truck, at these sites, the guys are like, whoa, so they're running down to get the 5-gallon drums of paint and carrying them up for us and all that. Oh my goodness, they're standing around watching them, do the painting and all this kind of stuff. And I can add 20% to my cost because they love the girls.
Yeah.
It was like having a strip club. It was like we could add 20% over everybody else. We didn't have to underprice at all because they wanted the girls to come. Yeah. We were booking up like crazy. And I actually sold the business to them, and they ran that business for another 20 years.
Wow.
But yeah.
You found a definite unique selling position that attracted the attention that you wanted and helped you stand out from what everybody else was doing, because everybody else was plain old vanilla at that point.
Yeah. And I mean, our business card had a long handle rolling paint roller and a silhouette of a woman.
That's amazing.
And they were just like, oh yeah, we got to hire them. We got to hire them. It was awesome. I made so much money doing that. That's crazy. Awesome.
So how did you transition then? So you did the Navy thing, then you were had the painting business for a while. And then at some point you transitioned back into the tech world. And
I got a job. I came back home to Chicago. And that was late 80s, mid late 80s. And I came back home to Chicago. And when I got back there, I wanted to get a job in tech because I was a radioman. Now that would be communications in the Navy. And the civilian world said, if you don't have a civilian degree or something in paper that says you know what you're doing, you can't get a job doing that. So I went to computer programming school. I took an accelerated programming school. And I met someone in a bar who's still a great friend of mine here in Vegas. She moved to Vegas as well. And it was almost like a Jaws. You ever see that movie Jaws when they're sitting on the boat and they're comparing scars?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we're sitting in this booth comparing scars, drunk off a beer. Thank God I don't drink anymore. And she ends up being one of my best friends. And she doesn't have a job. I don't have a job. And we're sitting there talking about school. She was going to one school. I'm going to another. She gets this job in a mailing house. And she says, hey, calls me up, says, hey, you should come over here. They're hiring. So I get a job at this mailing house. Long story short, I end up writing programs to make personalized mail, because back then, this was before Microsoft. It was before Word and all that. So all the mail was Dear Sir or Madam. all the mail was Windows envelopes. So now personalized mail was like the new hot trend. Oh my God, you can do this?
Yeah.
Dear Mary, dear Bob, people paid premiums for that in the 80s, right? Well, the guy ends up being that owns the business, turns out to be a jerk. He doesn't do half the mail for his clients. He doesn't pay half of his people, and he gets shut down by the IRS. So as they're kicking us out, I take his Rolodex. True story. I call, because I'm the manager, right? And I'm like, I'm not going to let everybody just get lost. So I take the Rolodex. For people that don't know what a Rolodex is, it's a round thing like this that you put all your little business cards in, and they were alphabetical order, and you would spin it and go through it. Kind of like what you do with your thumb now on your phone.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I took it home and I called everybody. And the second person I called said, well, you know how to do mail. I'm on a deadline. Can you do it? I'm like, yeah. You know, and then another person said, well, can you do it? And I said, yeah. And by like the 7th or 8th call, my pitch changed. I called and said, hey, he's been shut down, but I'm opening my own mailing house. Would you like us to take you on? I completely know your account and what your schedule is. And they were like, sure, what do we send our stuff? And I turned my little single story house into a mailing house. Wow. And that's where I made my first very successful business, was in mass mail production. And we ended up on the front page of the business section of the Chicago Sun-Times. The neighbor actually thought I was a drug dealer because I had a beeper that kept going off. And she was telling everybody, oh, I think the neighbor girl was a drug dealer. I'm like, okay, let me go tell her what I'm doing. But that's how I got back into tech. And that's how I made my first very successful business, was in mass mail production.
Wow. I feel like there's a common theme as you're talking, and you're like the master of pivoting and taking something from here all the way to over here with almost, it sounds like little effort. Like you're just like brilliant at like taking this idea and like shifting it completely and running with it and making it a success no matter what you do.
Well, I mean, we have our failures. Trust me, I've had a lot of them, but I'm a bootstrapper. I mean, that's what my summit is about. You know, it's like bootstrapping is my mastery. And I have to thank my parents for that, you know, because being sharecroppers, they didn't have, higher education. They didn't have a lot of help, but they knew how to stretch something. My mother would take a Sunday meal and we'd be eating that meal until Wednesday or Thursday. It went from a Sunday dinner with potatoes and all the fixings to being soup on, Wednesday or Thursday. She knew how to stretch that. Yeah. And I know how to do that in business. So I see things, I always tell people I see things in puzzles. And when I see those pieces come together, I know where to go with it. And I don't mind doing the work for the job. I don't mind putting in the elbow grease, because I tell everyone, you got to work your way in or you buy your way in. I personally would rather work my way in. I'll do the elbow grease. I'll get in there and get my hands dirty and get the work done, because then I can build. And I love seeing where the holes are. Yeah. That's where the success is. It's where the holes are. You hear people talk about red ocean, blue ocean, blah, 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 blah. But Steve Larson, very successful young man, he's in the summit as well. He talks about he tried swimming in the blue ocean. You spend so much money trying to teach people what the blue ocean is about. Like when Apple came out with the iPhone, they spent millions of dollars teaching people just how to use the iPhone. Yeah. Okay. But then if you let Apple do all of that work and you just create apps that go on it, now you're in the red ocean, but you've got something unique in it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love to do. It's like, I want to swim with the big boys. I want to be in the red ocean, but I want to be there with unique products, unique services that are filling holes that others may have missed, especially targeting small businesses. Because now, with COVID and with everything going on, people are just starting to realize that this COVID thing has leveled a lot of the playing fields in business, a lot of them. If I had done a show with Zoom and put it on national television this time last year, I would have gotten laughed off TV, because they would have said, what is this? That's crazy. They don't have any money. What's going on? But now you got everything from the Tonight Show to Oprah to, even ESPN is being done through Zoom.
Yeah.
So you doing it through Zoom, they don't think anything of it. It's like they could care less as long as you're hitting their target market.
Yeah.
So now you get to see where are the holes, how do I fill it, and what do I have to do to get it done? And if you're willing to get it done, you might find something that you can do 6 figures, 7 figures, even 8, because I've created many packages, many products that are 6, 7, 8-figure products on bootstrapping budgets, not broke strapping budgets. I try to tell people that you gotta put money into your business, but you don't necessarily have to get small business loans and all that kind of stuff. You just gotta do the work.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because I talk about that a lot with my clients and filling the gap. Like we always worry, like there's so many people that do what I do out there. And I always talk about sharing your story as part of like how you can stand out. But another way that you can stand out is find that gap in your industry that you want to come out in and fill it. Like find something that everybody else is missing. And that's when you can have some of that quantum leap success and grow quickly, because you're looking to fill that hole, to fill that need, so that you don't have to compete against what everybody else is doing, and you can do it just a slightly different way and bridge that gap in a different way. So it makes it so much more impactful, I feel like.
Yeah, totally.
So you've done a lot of different things, and I'm curious, what would you say has been like the number one thing in your life that you've had to overcome to achieve success today? Talking?
Being in front of the camera.
Oh, being in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, this is not me. Going back, I'll go back way, way back. My parents started coming to Vegas in the 70s, 1971, 72. And back then, MGM, where Bally's is, that used to be MGM. And people don't know that the carpets are different colors down the lanes, because back in the day, if you were under 21, you could be on those carpets, right? But in that, you just knew if you were a kid, you couldn't go in the main color carpet.
Yeah, and I grew up in Vegas too, remember? So I was born late 70s, and I still remember, like, you couldn't stop, and you definitely couldn't cross those different colors.
You couldn't cross those different colors. So when you came into the front door of what is now Bally's, that used to be high stake poker. And celebrities used to play right there. They didn't have fancy rooms and all the stuff they have now. They had a rope and that was it. And Red Fox used to play poker right there. And I would stand there and watch him play poker, and he would let security let me watch him play poker. And I told him that I wanted to be him. I wanted to be a stand-up comic when I grew up. And he told me, no, I'm not doing all of this so you can go and do what I do. He said, the power's behind the camera. The power's behind the curtain. If you're going to be in this business at all, get behind the camera. Well, I thought I would never be in production. I would never be anywhere near this business. So I forgot all about it. But then, fate would have it, I end up in this business. And I spent almost 20 years behind the camera, for 18 years. I'm back there doing this. And now I'm out front, So getting over the fear of being on this side is, that's the hardest thing. Now, mind you, my ultimate dream in life has always been to public speak, but that's controlling a room. You can feel the temperature of a room. You can see whether you got their interest, whether they're listening or not, whether anybody's paying any attention, because you're on that stage.
Yeah,
you and I are talking right now. Nobody may watch this. 1 million people may watch this.
Yeah, you don't know.
You don't know. You don't know if they're looking at this going, that person is crazy. Or if they're looking at this going, wow, they're really interesting. I want to watch again. You just have no idea. So for me, not knowing what's happening on the other side. Am I connecting? Do they like me? Am I saying the right thing? Am I sitting right? Is my collar turning down? It's just, being over here, hardest thing in the world I had to do.
So that brings up a question then. So you've pivoted that too. Like you've transitioned to being in front of the camera now where you're interviewing and you're center stage to say, like on Zoom all over the world. What was it that gave you the confidence to start connecting in that way?
I'm going to try to say this without crying. My best friend and one of my business partners passed last January of 2019 from breast cancer.
Sorry.
And we changed, thank you. We changed our name, we restructured, we almost shut the business down, to be honest. And we decided that, I decided get busy living or get busy dying. So we decided we're going to get busy living. We completely restructured and we changed our name to MelRose because her name was Melissa Rose. So we figured, and we saw 11 every day, 11, 11, 11, 11 every day for the 20 some years I knew her. So we changed her name to MelRose 11 because she's half of the 1111. So for years, whenever I came up with a new show idea, whenever I came up with a new concept, I would hunt for a host. And some people had never hosted a show before in their lives. They never even thought about being on television. And I could see in them that they'd be great on TV. And she'd say, you can see it in them. Why can't you see it in you? You need to be out there. And I'm like, you're nuts. I'm not doing it. It ain't going to happen. Forget about it. So last December, when we were talking about, okay, we've changed everything. We restructured. Our focus is different. You know, we're going in this direction. And my other business partner, Ann, said, we're going in this direction. We're following what she said. Are we going all the way? And I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, the only bullet we haven't hit is you doing your own show. And I said, I'm not doing that. No, you know, absolutely not. That's going to happen, you know? And then she says, but you want to do this show called Expert Talk. And I said, yeah. You know, I said, I got to find a host. That's where we were. We were in this hunt for a host. I said, I got to find a host. Da, da, da. She says, but when you talk about it, you know exactly who you want to talk to, exactly what subject you want to hit. She's like, that's your show. And you know, if Mel was here, she would be screaming at you. What the hell? Get your ass in front of the camera. This is your show. And I'm like, no, she wouldn't. So I have been very close with her parents for 20 something years. And I said, okay, I'll go talk to mom. And if mom says do it, I'll do it. So I went over to mom and I sat down with her and I said, Mom, you know, we're thinking about doing the show. Before I even got past, we're thinking about doing the show. Mom says, okay, so you're going to host it, correct? And I went, what? She said, it's time.
Oh my gosh, I so love this.
I'm like, she just looked at me. She said, it's time, you know, and Melissa was Filipino family. It's time. And I said, but Mom, time for dinner. But it's time. And I'm like, okay, and then I looked at Dad and I said, Dad, he said, what? It's time. And I was like, and he's like, you know, Melissa would want you to. And I'm like, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, so that's how I ended up here. It
was the perfect opportunity for you to step into who you're meant to be.
Yeah.
Like it was destined for you to do it.
And then when COVID hit, I was like screaming at everybody, see, I knew it was wrong. I knew we shouldn't have done it. We're shut down. That's it. It was a waste. We put all this time in it. Da, 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 da. The network's going to close us up. What do you mean we have to keep going? What do you mean we can't turn? What do you mean I'm good? What do you, but fine.
Yeah, even when it's hard and even when it's difficult, you still get to keep going and keep doing what you're meant to do.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love it.
So that's how we ended up with the show. That's how I ended up on this side of the camera. If you look at the end of our shows, every one of our shows, we close with, of course, thank you for watching. But right prior to that is our MelRose logo, and it says for Mel. We close everything for Mel.
Such a beautiful story.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, you know, she's looking down and she's so proud of you for how far you've come and how you've put yourself out there. And then you've gone over all these obstacles that have come since you guys even started it. So. Yeah.
And I know she's just like, you know, every time she was our CFO. So every time we spend money, I know she's going, what the, what? I could just hear, are you nuts?
Yeah.
So, yeah, she was the best. She was the absolute best. But
She's your angel in the business with you, because that's how I feel like to this day, that my mom's been gone for 19 years now, but she's part of the why for why I do what I do. And I
yeah,
wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her encouragement and hearing her in my ear every day, like motivating me, encouraging me, inspiring me to keep going and keep doing the stuff.
I totally agree. When we started, we were GEA, Goss, Estrada, and Anders. And we kind of still are, secretly we're GEA, even though that's not the name of the company anymore. And I was like, I guess we're not the E anymore. And then I said, wait a minute, her brother's name, Alan's been around. So we called Alan and said, guess what? He's like, what? I said, you're going to leave your job soon and you're going to come work for the business. And because we need an E. And he went, what the? And he has been
like job selecting. You're like, oh, your letter fits.
So he stepped in, took over her shares, and he's never been an entrepreneur, never wanted to be an entrepreneur. So pretty much for the last year, he's been on entrepreneur crash course, learning how to be a VP, because he has this personality for marketing. And he's actually an architect. And he's like learning how to be a VP of marketing. Starting next year, he'll be doing this full time. And so we can keep our E. I'm like, he's our E, and he's on top of it. Now he's learning how to edit, and now he's watching the shows going, you should have cut here. And I'm like, you know what, you're getting on my nerves now. I mean, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. But
stay in your lane.
we still have an Estrada in the business, and it's so great to have him. And he is definitely stepped up and stepped in. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. That's amazing. Such a fun way to like pull the family back into the business piece.
Yeah.
I love
I couldn't think of a better way to do it, Couldn't think of a better way to do it because we just couldn't do it without them. They've been a part of since 1997, 23 years. They've been a part, of my business, of my life, of my family. I couldn't think of a better way. Yeah. And then on top of that, I haven't worked another job. I haven't worked for somebody else since January of 2000 when I got laid off. And she was the one who said, you've been talking about starting this business, since I met you in 97, you're laid off now, and she was a vice president of a bank. And she's like, I got you. Go do the business. I got you.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah. She's like, if it wasn't for her, none of this would have happened. So there has to be an E in this business. So now we have Alan.
I love it. Such a cool story. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the summit before we wrap up. Can you tell everybody this episode is live the week of the summit. So go ahead and just tell us a little bit about what the summit means to you and what people can expect.
This is the Extreme Biz Summit. It's all about bootstrapping. It's about bootstrapping being your mastery. I have 28, 29 speakers, and they're from every walk of life. I've got a super mompreneur from Canada who literally had to shut down her 20-year business because of COVID, regroup, restructure, start again this year, and she's killing it. All the way to a young man who has made $1 million in less than 24 hours. Wow. I've got someone in there that's made $10 million in a quarter during COVID this past summer. And people that you're in it. Thank you so much coming in, teaching us about branding. We've got experts that came in to talk about business structure, branding, how to start your business, how they started their business, their journeys, what they're doing. The whole idea is to show you, and each one of these people that are speaking are all bootstrappers. They didn't inherit their money, okay? They didn't get a trust fund. They didn't go out and get an SBA loan. They did the work. They put in the elbow grease. They had to put in some of their own money. It's bootstrapping, not broke strapping. They had to put in their own money. But they knew they worked their day job. You come home and do what you have to do for your family. And then when everybody else is going to bed, you're doing your business. This is how how we do this business. And we're giving all kinds of training. We're giving all kinds of packages of information. We're helping you get started. So if you've got a business and you're stuck, all this interview, we've talked about pivoting. You know, I'm going to talk to you about all kinds of ways you can pivot, learn how to see these holes, how to see the big picture and the small details and where you fit in. You know, this is what it's about. It's about bootstrapping. Let's get your business going. Let's get your business growing. And if you've always wanted to start a business and didn't know how, come on in. We're going to show you how.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a great group of people, and I can't wait. I know some of the speakers, and I've heard you talk about some of the things that are in the summit. I can't wait to actually dive into it with everybody else as well. So we'll make sure that the link is below so that everybody can sign up and go get your free ticket for the summit so that you can devour all of this amazing goodness that Theresa's been working so hard at. Interviewing 29 people is like, I'm not worthy to be here with you, because when I've done my summits, 15 is like exhausting. So I can't imagine doubling that number. So thank you for all the hard work that you've put into it, because I know it's going to be a huge success, and I can't wait for people to hear my episode as well.
Thank you.
We had so much fun talking. I remember leaving the conversation for our interview that day, and I was like, that was so fun. I was like, me and Theresa, like, we were jamming about all kinds of different conversations, and it was just such a great conversation. And you're such a beautiful interviewer, the questions that you ask. So I know every interview is going to be gold. Before we wrap up, I always do a couple rapid fire questions to my guests. So
fire away.
I hope you're ready.
All right, let me sit up.
They're easy, I promise.
Okay.
I'm always curious about morning routines. So I'm curious, do you have a morning routine? And if so, what is it?
Oh, you mean other than the dogs looking at me like, you're not up yet? Let's go. No, I always at least try to take the first 10 minutes to just kind of get centered with myself, figure out where I'm at, and just kind of be grateful for where I'm at this moment before I take on whatever the challenges are for today. That's like really, really important to me. That's my morning routine. I have to just kind of go, because, you know, especially now with the summit and everything going on, I don't know what day it is. I have to look at my phone or look at the calendar to even know what day it is.
Yeah.
So I just try to get centered, take 10 minutes or so before I pick up my phone, before I look at my computer, before I even talk to my family, and just go, okay, yeah, I'm here and it's okay. And just be grateful for the moment. And then I start my day.
Yeah. And I would even push back and say that might just be part of COVID too, because I feel like it's not just the summit that's put you there where you don't even know what day it is. I think most of us are experiencing like, what is today? Like, what day of the week is it? Mm-hmm. We're all trying to figure that out with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would love to know, who is the person that has made the biggest impact and influence in your life?
Lillian McMorris. Lillian McMorris is a legendary producer, host here in Las Vegas. She's our local Oprah. And I have known her now for almost 20 years. I saw her, she was on Fox. She ran the longest talk show on Fox history in Las Vegas. And I saw her announce her retirement. And I had this idea. God only knows me and my ideas. So I called the station thinking I'd get her assistant. And she answered the phone. And I couldn't even talk. Because I, believe it or not, I used to be super, super shy and couldn't talk to anybody. And thanks to her, I can talk to people. And she said, honey, I don't know what you want, but let me take you to lunch so you can tell me what it is. And we have been best friends ever since. She taught me everything about production, everything about being on this side of the camera. And about 4 years ago, she had a massive stroke. But she is still, her mind is super sharp. And she is still my biggest critic. She still corrects me and still goes, what did you wear on that show? And we don't do that. So Lillian McMorris, yes, is my biggest influencer in this business.
And I know her name because I remember seeing her when I lived in Las Vegas. So that's fun.
You know, a little known fact is Russell Road in Las Vegas is the only street on the strip that's not named after a casino. And it's actually named after her father.
Is it?
And a lot of people don't know that. And it's named after her father because back when they did Hoover Dam, people of color were not allowed to stay down in Boulder City. And he created a tent city where Mandalay Bay is right now. And that's where they named Russell Road. And
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's teaching this Vegas
yeah.
native.
Yeah.
Some new information.
That's the only road on the Strip that is not named after a casino.
That's very true. Now I have some history behind it. That's amazing.
Yep.
All right. 2 more questions for you for the rapid fire. What's your happy space when you need to like reset and recharge? Where do you go? Or what do you do?
It's different now because it used to be movies. I used to be a movie junkie. I would just go to the movie theater and do a movie marathon. I might go see 2 or 3 movies. And now because of COVID, I'm not going in there. I don't care what they say. So now I kind of just find a space in my house. I don't have a big house. We actually live in a townhouse, but I call it the East Wing of the West Wing. And it's like, now I'll go to the West Wing and just listen to music, or I'll go and do something that's not work related, or I'll go edit a project that has absolutely nothing to do with work. That's just fun. I'll create something really cool about my grandson or something, or spend time with him because it's a little over a year old and he thinks he's 20. So it's just fun spending time with him.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. We've all had to adjust a little bit for where our normal happy spots are, because mine's at the beach, and I have been able to escape to the beach a few times, but the beaches are open and they're closed, and they're open and they're closed here in California. We don't know whether we're coming or going most days. So yeah, I've had to make my own little sanctuary at home as well. So I can totally relate to that. And my last question for you, and I know that you can't do it today, but if I could give you a ticket and let you travel anywhere in the world, where would you go and why?
I'd probably go back to Hong Kong. And because Hong Kong has been my second home now for, good God, 15 years. And I haven't been back in a while. And I just want to go back. It feels like home to me. Yeah. So I'd probably go back to Hong Kong. If I wasn't going to be international, I'd go back to Chicago, because I haven't been there in a while either. So I'd go to one of my homes. I'd either go to Chicago or I'd go to Hong Kong.
Or Hong Kong. Yeah.
I go home.
It's nice to go back to that comfort. So I love that. Theresa, it's been so much fun having you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your crazy schedule while you're working on the summit so that we could record this interview so we could share it the week of. How can people find you and connect with you?
The best way to find me is to go to 4tgo.com, the number 4, TGO.com. That's the best way to contact me, to reach out to me, to find out being a guest on my show, to find out what other crazy projects, God only knows what I've got coming up next, and just stay in touch. That's the best way to reach me.
Awesome. And I know you have a free gift for everybody that listens besides joining the summit, because everyone's going to sign up for the summit, but I know you have one more gift for everybody.
I do. We have a marketplace called MelRose11.net. We have a marketplace, and on there we've been in, like I said, I've been a computer programmer my whole life. I've been doing web development since 1991, and we do all kinds of stuff for branding and all that. So I'm going to give a $25 gift certificate to everybody who comes to I'm going to give you a web address. You can drop below. They just come, give me their name, their email address, and then I'm going to give them a scale from 1 to 10 of where they are with starting their business. Just pick a number. And then I'll give them a $25 gift certificate. They can spend in MelRose in our marketplace. They can get a logo done. They can get a little bit of an animation done. They can, whatever, $25, go spend it. I don't care.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's such a great, generous gift for you to give.
I appreciate you. You are awesome. If people don't know, as they're listening to you, you are a wealth of knowledge when it comes to branding. Listen to this lady. She knows what she's talking about. I have been in business for 46 plus years. And that interview for our summit, I learned so much just listening to you. So listen to her. She knows what she's talking about. She's the bomb.
Yeah. And listen to what Theresa says, because she knows. Thank you so much, Theresa. This was so much fun. And that's a wrap for another episode of the Attract and Stand Out podcast. We will see you next week for our next episode. Have an amazing day.
Thank you.